Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Two Way Tonight. I'm Mark Halperin. Grateful to have you here on another day where the biggest story in the country and the world was Donald Trump's posture towards Vladimir Zelensky and what might happen next to unstick what remains stuck at this hour, which is where the next step will come from between the U.S. and Ukraine, between the U.S. and Russia. Not much talk about anything between Russia and Ukraine at this point. No one I talked to today, no one I heard today really has a good handle on what's going on. The Europeans are kind of two minds. They continue to criticize softly and more firmly President Trump and urge him to get back on track. And the United States, the president himself, as you'll hear in just a moment, and his advisors seem to not be bending at all in their determination to get Zelensky not just to apologize for what happened on Friday and his role in it, but also to understand from their point of view that the kind of deal he wants, the kind of security assurances, the kind of role he wants to play in negotiating a peace deal is not going to happen on Donald Trump's watch. So we'll talk a lot about that. And the president today at his signing ceremony, at which he announced not an agreement on autos and an auto investment, although is happening apparently, but semiconductors, a large firm from Taiwan, is going to build a plant here in the United States. He talked quite a bit then about Zelensky, and we'll listen to that. The other big story is the tariffs. And I continue to tell people just because you can go online now and read a bunch of headlines saying Donald Trump says that, yes, at midnight, 25% tariffs, broad-based tariffs on Canada and Mexico will go in to force at midnight. It could happen, but you shouldn't assume that just because he said it's going to happen, it's going to happen, and they could come off in a day. But markets had their Dow lost 650, largest loss of 2025, largest since December. And everyone has been kind of fascinated. But this question of why have markets so far largely well handled the both the threat of tariffs and the actual imposition of tariffs. And people said they priced them into the stock, or they, like me, didn't necessarily take Donald Trump seriously in all this and thought he would turn away from them. For whatever reason, today really bothered them. There's all sorts of speculation. Just as there continues to be speculation about what happened on Friday in the Oval Office, there continues to be speculation about what the president's actual tariff strategy is. Is this making a point to China via Mexico and Canada? Is it playing Canada and Mexico off each other? Is it a warning to Europe? I don't think anybody knows. I'm not sure the president knows entirely. But again, as of now, markets are believing probably that president's going to go forward with it. Again, though, the dominant story of the day is the continuing tensions between the head of this country and the head of Ukraine. If you want to be in on the conversation, please raise your hand if you're here on the two-way platform. If you're watching on YouTube or X, you can go into the comments and comment to your heart's content. All we ask, whether you're asking a question here or going into the comments on the other platforms, please adhere to our ethos of peace, love, and understanding, and extending the presumption of grace to all. That includes National Security Advisor Waltz, Marco Rubio, Lindsey Graham, Chuck Schumer, pretty much everybody. As I've told you, everyone gets a pass on two people. So pick your own two personal people. You don't need to extend the presumption of grace to them, but you do to everybody else. All right, big night here because we have a sponsor. Two-Way Tonight, brought to you by the Bahnsen Group, and couldn't be more delighted. The Bahnsen Group is a great company and headed by someone who's been a big contributor to this platform. David Bahnsen used to be at Morgan Stanley, now runs a private wealth management firm. He gives broad-based advice to folks who are fortunate enough to have enough income and wealth to invest. Questions about tax, estate advisory, and they manage it all in-house. They don't farm it out, and they create a lot of content, including something called the Dividend Cafe. You see there, which is their newsletter, which is quality content. I'm a big reader of it, and as they say in the trade, you should be too. So we're honored to have them as our sponsor. You can subscribe to Dividend Cafe. Go to our website, twoway.tv/TBG for the Bahnsen Group. And you can sign up for the Dividend Cafe. Again, I recommend it to you. It's free and it's very high quality content. Also, this Thursday night, after Two-Way Tonight, immediately after Two-Way Tonight, David Bahnsen will join us for a two-way event, our first private event with them. any two-way community member is welcome to join. We're going to be talking about tariffs, and David has got quite a bit of expertise on what these mean, what they mean for the world economy, America's economy, what they mean for individual households. So if you want to be part of that conversation, you can sign up at our website. And if you want to be a subscriber to the Dividend Cafe for the same low price of nothing, you can go also to twoway.tv/TBG. And we thank the Bahnsen Group. All right. As I said, tonight, our focus will be a lot on what the president said in the photo op today regarding Ukraine. But I'm going to start with something else because the First Lady spoke today, her first event since Trump 2. And just going to show you that. We'll be joined in just a little bit by Alex Eisenstadt of Axios and our friend Matt Gorman. But let's look at Melania Trump. It's going to be number 5, please. I just want you to hear the First Lady talk on an event she did in Capitol Hill having to do with revenge porn and deepfakes. Roll tape, please.
I'm here with you today with a common goal: to protect our youth from online harm. The widespread presence of abusive behavior in the digital domain affects the daily lives of our children, families, and communities. Addressing this issue is essential for fostering a safe and supportive environment for our young people. I hope today's roundtable builds awareness of the harm caused by non-consensual intimate imagery, and eventually the approval of the Take It Down Act bill in Congress.
Okay. She talked quite a bit. I led with that for a change of pace because we usually lead with Donald Trump talking at the White House. There's the First Lady. I'm going to talk about her with Alex and with Matt in just a second. Back to the president. Okay. One of the dynamics that's going on now and why this will be difficult to fix the relationship is Donald Trump did not love Zelensky before. We all know the fraught history between them. He tends to divide people, as George Bush would say, between a good man and a bad man. Thinks Zelensky's a bad guy, doesn't think he's tough, doesn't think he's somebody he wants to deal with. And now Zelensky has offended him. And so when Donald Trump has this posture towards someone, and again, I'm not telling you guys something you don't already know, he's looking for fault, right? He's not looking to cut Zelensky a break now. He's looking to be more critical. He's looking for Zelensky to do things that make him say, see, this is a bad guy. So Zelensky said this thing about how the war is going to go on for a long, long time. And that rubs Trump the wrong way because his view is, no, the war is going to end pretty soon because I'm going to make a deal with Putin. So play number 2, please.
President Zelensky supposedly made a statement today in AP. I'm not a big fan of AP, so maybe it was an incorrect statement, but he said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time. And he better not be right about that. That's all I'm saying.
And he put something on Truth Social about it later. Now, the other thing is, it's kind of incredible. We're all a nerd to it to some extent, but it's kind of incredible the degree to which this president criticizes his predecessor with impunity, criticizes Joe Biden in no uncertain terms, no nuance, no subtlety, nothing elliptical about it. But he continues to be also very critical of Zelensky for not showing sufficient appreciation. Now, as you also probably know, NBC has reminded people in a story they wrote last couple of days about how Joe Biden at times also thought Zelensky was not appreciative enough. Zelensky's supporters say, give the guy a break. He's exhausted. He's heroic. He's rallied the world against tyranny. And if he doesn't remember to say thank you every time, just review the record. He's obviously very appreciative. But as I said, also, Trump is just not in the mode now where he's inclined to cut Zelensky a break. So roll, Sam, please, number 1.
Need to see from President Zelensky to restart these negotiations?
Well, I just think he should be more appreciative because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us because, as you know, that's right there. That's the border. This country really was like the fence on the border. It was very important to Europe, and I'm not knocking Europe. I'm saying that they were a lot smarter than Joe Biden because Joe Biden didn't have a clue. He just gave money hand over fist. and they should have been able to equalize with us. In other words, if we gave $1, they should have given. Well, we gave 350 billion. They probably gave 100, but on top of it all, they get their money back because they're doing it in the form of a loan, and it's a secured loan. So when I saw that, which I've known about for a little while, I said it's time for us to be smart. At the same time, it's great for them because they get us in the country taking the rare earth, which is going to fuel this big engine, and especially the engine that we've in a very short time created. And we get something, and we're there. We have a presence there.
Point of this, come out of this. I want to show you one more thing, which is the president talking about America and trade and why he feels the need to impose tariffs. This is number 4, please.
The United States has been taken advantage of for 40 years. The United States has been a laughingstock for years and years. That's why this gentleman is built in Taiwan instead of building here. It would have been better if he built here. If we had a president that knew what they were doing, and we had a lot of them very bad on trade. Look, I'm a huge fan of Ronald Reagan, but he was bad on trade, very bad on trade. He allowed a lot of people, a lot of businesses to be taken. So I say that with due respect because he was so great on other things, but he was bad on trade. We are setting records right now, records like nobody has ever seen before. When you have companies like this coming in and almost 40% of their company in one signature is going to be devoted to what he does, which is one of the most important businesses in the world. That's an unbelievable thing. When Apple now is going to start building all of their plants here, all because of what we've done in terms of, it's not because he likes me or they like me. They don't probably like me at all. I don't know. I think he likes me a little bit at least. But you know what? It's the incentive we created or the negative incentive. I mean, it's going to be very costly for people to take advantage of this country. They can't come in and steal our money and steal our jobs and take our factories and take our businesses and expect not to be punished. And they're being punished by tariffs. It's a very powerful weapon that politicians haven't used because they were either dishonest, stupid, or paid off in some other form. And now we're using them.
All right. Lots to discuss. Matt Gorman is back with Puppy. And Alex Eisenstadt's here. Alex, have you been on Two-Way before?
First time.
First time. Well, what are your impressions of Two-Way?
Log time watcher, and I'm honored to be on. I've been looking forward to it.
Well, we're very happy to have you here. And here, Sarah Bianchi, longtime advisor to many Democrats, who knows more about economics than Alex, Matt, and I will ever forget combined. So let's start, because I don't know if we have Sarah the whole time. I saw her guzzling. Sarah, was that alcohol, root beer? What was it?
This was a Diet Coke.
Diet Coke. Did you see the story in the Wall Street Journal today? They're trying to get rid of Diet Coke. I'm
okay with that. I've moved to Coke Zero, so I'm good. I'm just in Europe and tonight, and this is what they had. But directionally,
is that from the mini bar?
It's not. It came with my food, my Uber Eats delivery.
Got it. Uber Eats in Europe and Asia is the best. The best. Sarah, what's going on with markets, tariffs, and Trump?
Well, it's really interesting. When we first kind of wrote about the impact of Trump, people thought, well, look, he'll be deregulatory and there'll be more opportunity for M&A, and then we'll have this kind of risk out there of immigration, trade, and deficits. And actually, I think we're seeing a little bit of another risk too, which is just uncertainty. And you're just seeing it. Obviously, the markets didn't like his announcement about 25% on Canada and Mexico because it would be a real economic problem. But I think there's also a lot of kind of fatigue and concern about kind of how to invest in this market. So we're seeing some of that too. But they are worried. The markets are certainly worried about the announcement that he is going to put in across the board a 25% tariffs, and particularly the auto industry and others would.
What's your expectation and markets' expectations about what Mexico and Canada will do?
Well, I think even with the amount of drop you saw, the market's expectation and mine is that if he does put this into place, it won't be for very long. I think
Right.
GM was down 3%. If he was going to put this in place for a long time, GM should be down 30%. So I think it's less about the retaliation now and more about how long is this going to be in place. And if it's going to be in place for more than a week, then you're going to see a lot more market movement than that.
Alex, the White House and Commerce, I mean, every Trump official I deal with and hear on shows, and even most of their allies, you got to unmute Alex, are remarkably, I'll say, even the ladies are macho about the tariffs. They show very little sensitivity to why some people are worried about this. Is that an act, or do they have some theory of the case that tariffs lead inexorably towards success?
Well, the administration really has bought in on the idea of tariffs. It's something Trump really wants. Um, one of the interesting comparisons to this White House to the last White House is that you had people in the last White House like Gary Cohn, the who became known as quote unquote the globalist segment of that White House, people who pushed back on the idea of tariffs. This White House is very different. Trump has surrounded himself with people who very much agree with him. You're not seeing as much, fighting in this White House, as much disagreement. And so if Trump wants something, whether it's tariffs, whether it's pushing back on Ukraine, that's probably the direction things are going to go. And you saw a lot more internal debate in the last White House than in this White House.
Matt Gorman, you're my ambassador to K Street. You know all those people.
Yeah.
Is K Street worried about the tariffs at this point, or they also think they're just going to come off?
I think your read on the situation that you mentioned is right. I think they believe that Trump will find a way out of this in the next however many hours, or, right, because it's gotten a little rote where, Trump pushes the car from going off the cliff. Does it happen for a day or two? And then they walk it back. I think the ladders get increasingly a popular thought that he's kind of saved the day at the last hour, the last couple times, and this is where it's going to go over for a little bit, and he'll push it back.
Sarah, leave aside who the president is and just talk about sort of basic economics. Governors, for our whole careers, they fly all over the globe trying to bring business from overseas to their state, particularly manufacturing. This president has gotten some. Now we all know that some of these deals will never actually happen or not happen at the scale they're announced. But is it good? Is this good economics for the United States to bring semiconductor manufacturing here, to bring auto manufacturing here from Honda? Is that just solid good economics for the United States or not?
Well, I think certainly in some strategic areas, regardless of what you think of industrial policy, even those who aren't as big as fan understand that there's certain areas like semiconductors where it's probably good national security as well as economic security. It's all good and well to have investment in the United States. President Biden tried a lot of that through the CHIPS Act and other aspects. I think there's just I think where there's disagreement is whether or not kind of tariffs alone are going to drive that kind of behavior. But
Also just I think just courtship, right? I mean, some of these decisions are probably hedged against tariffs, but some of it are just Donald Trump saying, I'll look favorably upon you if you come here. Or do you think it's just the tariff threats?
it's not just the tariff threats. No, no, no. I mean, look, some of it comes through. I think CHIPS and Inflation Reduction Act. I mean, those were like real incentives.
Yeah.
But look, if it's in your economic interest, anyways, certainly it's a good way to curry favor with the president and prevent some. Obviously, TSMC has some real risk at stake in this economy, in this geopolitical environment. So there's lots of reasons to do it. I certainly don't think tariffs are the only a reason. I don't even think they're.
Yeah.
They'd probably make the top 10, 20 reasons.
I agree. All right. So one more for you, Sarah, and then I want to talk about Ukraine. John McCain used the famous expression in 2008, the fundamentals of the economy are strong, right? He took a lot of heat for that. My view is, in general, that's true of America. Most of the time, the fundamentals are pretty strong, particularly compared to other countries. But what would you say, leaving aside who the president is, are the fundamentals of the economy, U.S. economy right now, strong or not?
Um, by all traditional metrics, for sure, in terms of employment and
So
payroll,
what?
and
Yeah. What else?
in
What
terms
else?
of,
What else looks strong to you besides employment and payroll? Not in terms of necessarily output, but in terms of more fundamentals, like our competitive advantage in certain industries or trade, whatever it is. What else is
yeah,
strong besides the jobs and
I,
employment data?
a lot of stuff. I mean, I think, yeah. I mean, a lot of the strong industries are being built here. It's a, um, I'm over here in London right now, and the U.S. equity markets, the most generally speaking, the envy of the world. So we have a lot of top growing industries. I think the difference is that. Even compared to 2008, I mean, the American people don't feel good about it. They don't feel they're measuring off a different metrics, and I'm not dismissing those as important, but by traditional economic metrics, yeah, things are pretty good.
Alex, the economic team, president, vice president, the head of the National Economic Council, Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of Commerce. Who's the commander in chief? Like how are they dividing this up, or is that still kind of in formation?
Trump is going to be the decision maker here, but ultimately you have a lot of people around him who are going to be supportive of his views and his goals. You're not going to see a lot of departure from him as it relates to economic policy. These are people who are brought in, who are supportive of him throughout the campaign. And again, you're not seeing a lot of division in this White House when it comes to major decisions.
I saw any of you guys watch Face the Nation yesterday? Any of you guys watch that? No. All right. So on Face the Nation, Scott Bessent was on, Secretary of Treasury. I'm looking now for the thing I wanted to bring up. And he was being asked about inflation and prices and all that. And he said that, hold on, I'm going to find it. He said, here it is. He said, we're going to have an affordability czar at Treasury and an affordability council. Someone who picks 5 or 8 areas where this administration can make a big difference for working class Americans. So, as far as I can tell, I'm the only one who noticed he said it. I didn't see any coverage of this, including in a Wall Street Journal front page story on this very issue of Republicans being worried that the administration wasn't doing enough about sending signals to Americans slash voters that they are working on this. So, first of all, did any of you know that we were about to have an affordability czar? Was that on anybody's radar? You did. Sarah
I
did.
did.
How'd you know,
Yeah,
Sarah? How'd you know, Sarah?
I read it. I can't remember where I read it.
Okay. So, how is that a good idea?
Sure,
Substantively, sure. Well,
sure, sure.
if the president named you affordability czar,
Mhm.
what would you say you'd do?
Well, it's as the Biden administration learned the hard way, it can be tricky. Um, but certainly, I'd want to look at healthcare costs. If there's anything to do around um, food costs, and higher ed. I mean, there's a lot of places to start, but there's
But what would
drug
you do
cost.
as the czar? I'm serious. Like, would you do studies? Would you ask for
Apps,
executive orders?
executive orders. I'd look for
Executive
executive
orders.
orders. I'd come up
Right.
with a series of 5 places where I thought you could make a difference, um, either through executive order or legislation. Highlight them very strongly, um, and see if I could get action. But I
Yeah.
no, I don't think a lot of studies would is what President Trump or Best is trying to solve for.
Right. Linda McMahon was confirmed as education secretary, so they're still on a bit of a roll. Matt Gorman, like I'm starting to see cracks in the PR operation, and I'm going to give you an example of one in just a minute. But you got the Secretary of Treasury announcing affordability czar. Alex, who pays close attention, didn't know. You pay close attention, you didn't know. I only know because I read the transcript of Face the Nation. Is that a even a mildly worrying, to what extent is it a worrisome sign that the Treasury Secretary is announcing something on an issue of that importance and they're not really amplifying it?
My only explanation was, is it a soft float that they're going to really go into at the State of the Union, right? That would be my
Ooh,
thing.
that's interesting. That could be a big part of the speech,
Yes,
particularly if they've named somebody who's good.
yes, and that's one thing, right? Like if this was a random idle Monday, I could see your point. I feel like a couple things. I don't think the White House is blind to this. I think they realize that they need to tell a story on this. Look, they recognize that the White House did a big thing wrong on inflation. Instead of storytelling, it was spin. It was transitory. It was trying to just get to the next news cycle instead of laying down a longer narrative. And I think the White House understands, I hope they do, people I talk to, that they have to lay down a longer narrative of prices than just trying to win the week on it. That's one. I think it's a soft float for the State of the Union. If I would be shocked if there wasn't more detail on this in the State of the Union. And look, one thing we haven't talked about a lot, I don't think this is the big flashy thing, but Trump's a TV producer. He loves dramatic things. He loves moments that can capture people's attention, but bigger announcements. I think this would be one of them that would take away, we could take away from on tomorrow night.
Sarah, just hypothetically, if you were going to be named the affordabilities are in the State of the
I'm
Union,
not, by the
would
way.
you feel
I have
obligated to
no
tell
premature
us?
announcements.
Would you feel obligated to tell us, or would you think it would be okay out of fidelity to the president and the confidence not to say?
I would not say, but I can confirm that I'm not.
Well, it's hard to know if that's true because you already said you wouldn't say. So if you
Yeah, I
want in on
wouldn't
the
say.
conversation, raise your hands. All right, this happened today. Sam put up the Politico graphic about the HHS. It's another thing that could be a canary in the coal mine. The spokesperson at the Department of Health and Human Services quit today after clashing reportedly with Bobby Kennedy about his overall management style and about what he's doing about is it the measles outbreak? Is that what it is? The measles outbreak.
Yeah.
Okay. So I
Yes,
never heard of the
measles.
guy. I never heard of the guy who quit. I can't vouch for the Politico story. That's the reason. But I will say there's a number of cabinet secretaries, and I would name them thusly. You can take that down. Bobby Kennedy, Pete Hegseth, Kristi Noem. There's a couple others who like managing these departments hard. Forget MAGA, forget ideology, forget, standing up to owning the libs and confirming. Like my biggest doubt about most of these people is can they run the department and manage the staff? Because they're all mercurial in one way or the other, right? And to have this guy quit, because this is a guy who quit, as I read about him, he's not a holdover. He's not some deep state bureaucrat in sandals and beads ready to quit to make a point. He was brought in by the administration. So, Alex, is it possible that this is a sign that some of these people may not be able to run these things? Because when the spokesperson quits, it usually means they see trouble coming and they don't want to be out there the voicing and defending the trouble.
Well, here's what I can tell you about RFK based upon some of the reporting that I've done, which is that he feels he came in feeling very emboldened to make the kind of changes that he wants. He did not come in with his tail between his legs. He came in feeling like he was going to go in and say what he wanted to say and do what he wanted to do. And that's going to rub some people the wrong way. Some people are going to go along with it. Some people aren't. But you can bet that there's going to be, look, there was chaos in RFK's presidential campaign. We forget about that, but it was a very chaotic operation. And I remember when they were trying to lock down the whole.
Close to the most ever. Let's be honest. It was close to the most ever.
It was chaotic when they were trying to line up his endorsement of Donald Trump. I mean, it was chaos up until the very end. And so RFK is coming in feeling emboldened, feeling like he's going to do what he wants to do. There's going to be some clashes in that department for sure. It's a big, complicated department under normal circumstances.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's going to be some churn there for sure.
Yeah. What about you, Matt? Do you look at this as I do as potentially a sign that there's going to be more than churn?
I mean, well, I guess my question is, I don't know this guy. Maybe he's great. Maybe he's not. I have no idea.
Yeah.
What the hell do you think? Like you were going to walk into? Like I guess my question is, I guess some people reported it as over the measles response. I mean, look, you gotta know you're going into a, operation that's a work in progress at best, right? And you need to be able to bring structure to that. If you are suddenly finding yourself up with, massive, I can't work for you disagreements on policy, I would just wonder, like, what do you,
Well, but I could interrupt you just because I don't think this is over policy, would be my guess, right? I think, I've tried to talk about this in terms of Musk as well. Like, there's competence and there's ideology, and there's certain traits. Again, this has got nothing to do with pro or anti-MAGA. There's certain traits in a good boss, right?
Mhm.
Like benevolent, not mercurial, fair, tells you what's expected, doesn't put you in a bad position through their own actions, right? To me, those are good traits in a boss in any business, regardless of whatever. And these people are not that. They're not that.
no.
And so you say, what did you expect? I can tell you, again, I don't know Bobby Kennedy at all. I've met him, but I'm not some expert. But I can tell you that I could easily imagine somebody offered that job and can't believe the extent to which he is not a good boss. Can't believe it when they get there. And I
I,
bet you that's what happened.
my only read on that was based off a report I saw. I think it was Yahoo or somebody that said it was about or around the measles thing.
Yeah.
That's all.
But Politico's story says also just his general managerial oeuvre
Yeah.
and style. And again, like if you just look at that guy's history and as Alex, you pointed out, his presidential campaign was you could call it a clown show, and then you'd have to write an apology to the clowns. It was a mess, and he wasn't suddenly magically imbued through the confirmation process with the capacity to manage. It
And then,
just
look, you
wasn't.
gotta go in with these things, eyes wide open. I mean, you got to understand exactly your point, right? This is not trying to think who's somebody who's great, adept at running agents. He's not going in Tommy Thompson's HHS.
Right, right,
And so you got to go look. You got to balance it. Be like, look,
right.
this might be a learning curve, to put it lightly, and I can help bring structure, or it's not for me, and you do your best
Yeah.
to do something else. But that you got to go in eyes wide open.
Yep. All right, let's bring folks in again. If you want to be in on the conversation, you're here in the two-way platform. Please raise your hand as we bring in Jack, Matt, and then Sarah, and then Alex. And Sarah, I don't know if you were here for this when I played that. Were you here when I played the Melania Trump clip? Sarah, were you here for that?
I
You
missed that.
All right, Matt, what'd you think in general, playing off that clip of the role the first lady's playing this time?
I'm fascinated by it. I mean, I think, she's going to do her own thing as she should. She's I think probably the furthest thing from Joe Biden we see, where she's not in the West Wing every day, nor does she want to be. I was very fascinated. This was what she took kind of as her first issue.
Yeah.
And I think it's an interesting policy point.
Yeah, Alex, I think people for a while, the people who doubted Donald Trump would run, 4 years ago, said partly they based that on that she wasn't supportive. And of course, she wasn't around in this campaign nearly as much as she was 8 years ago, and not nearly as much as a normal spouse would be. So where do you see her fitting in this time?
So here's the thing about Melania Trump, which is that she was not as involved in this past campaign as she was in the previous one. That's true. Part of the reason was because she is just more focused on being a mom, seeing Barron off to college, to NYU. That was part of it. She had a close relative who passed away, and that was part of it. Is also she just doesn't feel like she necessarily wanted to be part of that campaign. She made the decision to show up at Madison Square Garden, that event, right beforehand. But here's the thing, just because she's not playing a public role, that doesn't mean she's not playing a private role. And he actually listens to her. She doesn't agree with everything he does. She criticizes him sometimes. But when you talk to Donald Trump's advisors, they'll tell you that when they call him in the evenings and he's with her, she's right there on the line with them. And so she has shielded herself from the public to a large extent now, but she's still playing an important role.
Sarah, since Nancy Reagan, who's your favorite Republican first lady and why?
Well, that's a great question.
Sarah used to work for politicians, so she knows when she doesn't know the answer to start with. That's a great question.
No,
Have some time to think.
I kind of, I guess Laura Bush. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really. Look, I think all those relationships are complex and complicated, and
Yeah.
sometimes the ones you think are really influential aren't, and the ones you think aren't are. And so I don't really have.
All right. I'm writing down Laura Bush because that's what you said. All right. Jack.
I love a good library.
Yeah, good library. Jack, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind, please.
Well, good afternoon from San Antonio. Uh, I I found so much of what's been going on the last few days. It just makes me flash back to some of the first term for the president. He's his own worst enemy. Some of these things, they're so mercurial. I really worry about what will happen as some of these things fully develop. For example, I spoke with a person just yesterday that's a manager in Germany, a big Air Force base, and accounting and finance. And she's all of a sudden to a point where she's working 14-hour days because so many of her staff have been driven out in one fashion or another. And one of the more dramatic is she has a woman who's 7 months pregnant, really sharp, but because she took a promotion, she's now probationary. So she's been dropped. And because she's been dropped, the status of forces agreement won't allow her to stay in Germany. But her doctor, since she's 7 months pregnant, won't allow her to travel. These are the kind of things I'm sure it will be straightened out. But, if the media got a hold of this type of thing, they could just make hay with that sort of situation. And you see so much of that with the president. And I think it's unfortunate, and I'm afraid it'll come to bite him come the midterms.
Yeah, Jack, you're just the general chaos you think is unseemly.
I do.
Yeah. Alex, what do you think of the level of chaos as compared to the early days of Trump 1.0?
Feels to me like there's a lot less chaos this time than there was last time. It doesn't mean there's not chaos this time. There clearly is chaos as it relates to the White House's coordination with Elon Musk. Clearly was a lot of chaos last week as it related to the influencers who visited the White House getting a hold of the Epstein files and then other people not getting to look at those Epstein files. There's clearly chaos going on in this administration, but it pales in comparison to what we saw 8 years ago. But it doesn't mean there's not chaos going on in this administration.
Matt?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like, by this time in 2017, you had how many senior staff that were already shown the door? You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
I feel like the fighting internally is, again, from my perspective, Alex is better wired than I am. Same with you, Mark, is not even close to what it was. And I feel like that is a huge difference and I think help for Trump. Look, chaos is a broad term. It can be, where barbarians are at the gates or it's, just a couple disagreements. But that to me is the biggest thing. These guys are aligned internally. They've been through the wars and it's us against the world in a lot of respects. Where in 2017, you had the RNC crew who are good people, but like it was the old guard, the new guard, and everybody was at war with each other 24/7.
Sarah, just hold one second. New York Times is reporting that the FBI's top field official in New York City is quit, or rather forced out of his job by the administration. And if you're going to go to war with the deep state, if you're going to go to war with the bureaucracy, if you're going to go to war with the government employees, the FBI is not the last place you'd want to tangle. That'd be the intelligence community. But FBI agents play for keeps. So this guy being forced out will cause an uproar. Sarah, the truest thing I could ever say on this program is every administration, even the ones that seem the most organized, lots of chaos behind the scenes, in any White House, right? So explain to folks how the chaos gets hidden from public view.
Yeah, look, I don't really think the metric for this administration is how they compare to 2017. It's just how public and voters and markets and other stakeholders perceive them. In my opinion, there's always a lot of chaos, and particularly at the beginning when people are sorting out who is who and all of that. So that's not unusual. I think more of the chaos this time feels like it's driven not by disagreements within, but by the president, who's just come back really kind of on a mission to execute some of the things he felt he wasn't last time. Feels like he has this kind of runway to get a lot of things stuff. So it's less sort of, some White House disorganization, but it's also just going really fast on a lot of stuff. I think that is what the public feels more chaotic than disagreement internally.
Right. Jack, thank you. Thank you. It's an important topic. Thank you for raising it. And I'll say many people I know share your concern. David, come on in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind, please.
How do you do, Mark? Thanks very much for having me. I'm on Bear Mountain outside of Tehachapi, California.
What elevation are you at?
I'm sorry?
What's the elevation that you're at?
I'm right at 5,200 feet. It's beautiful, snowy, and I'm
Yeah.
this
You got
time I'm in the
you
clouds.
you got any cans of oxygen around?
I don't need oxygen. 5,200, the air is pretty rich still.
Yeah.
About 7,000.
Where's the close? How far do you have to go to get a Diet Coke?
Well, I could go down to the convenience store down on the valley floor. I live in a community here, and it's pretty well served, but I don't drink Diet Coke.
Well, let's say you had guessed. Let's say Sarah and I were over. How long would it take you to get down there?
Oh, 8, 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. You're not in the middle of nowhere. All right. What kind
No,
of wild?
but
What
I
kind
can
of?
see it from here.
Yeah. Do you have bears?
There are bears. I've had bears take my bird feeders and scare my wife and get the dogs agitated, but they're small black bears, so they're not really like bears,
Yeah.
They're little, get out of here, bear. I yell at
Yeah.
them and they run away.
And are you a native Californian, David?
No, I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and grew up in Morris County, New Jersey, greater New York area.
Did you move out during the gold rush or to be a Hollywood star?
Almost. I came out here to work. I still am technically, but I was in show business for a long time, so you had to be in greater Hollywood. So I lived down in Ventura County, outside of greater Los Angeles for about 20 years.
Are you like me, troubled that we'll never hear Demi Moore's acceptance speech?
You know what? I am.
Yeah.
I never was a crazy Demi Moore fan, not for any real reason, but wasn't like during the Brad Pack era. But when I saw the substance, I was like, wow. I don't know if it's an Oscar-winning role, but I think it would have been nice for her to get an honor like that.
I want to hear the speech. I'm thinking of inviting her on two-way and asking her to give her acceptance speech.
Get her on.
Just so we can hear it.
Mikey, is it Madison? She did a great job as well.
Yeah,
It's a little
I got nothing
more of an
against her.
acty kind of role.
I got nothing against her. Just want to hear the speech. All right, I could talk about this forever, but Alex and Matt are both checking their email. So, David, what's on your mind?
Well, I just, we were talking about chaos and, Trumpness and things, just the flow of the show. By the way, the platform is unbelievable. Long-time watcher, first-time caller. Thanks to you. I like the voice in the morning. I like Gorman. I mean, this is a great thing to be a part of, and I super appreciate it.
You're very nice. Thank you.
The chaos of the early days of the Trump administration, I think Ms. Bianchi is spot on that there's always some element of that we always get a sense of. It's hyped up and amplified with Trump, like all the other, where do we get the dagger in the armor in general. But I think it goes without saying that there's always going to be a fair amount of chaos in this phase of any administration. And I would guess that they're just better at managing it later on. There's probably chaos in it for from the announcement in the campaign to the last wave as they get on Air Force, whatever Air Force One is called when it's no longer Air Force One.
You're right. But as Sarah did correctly point out, in the beginning, it's a little more pronounced as people figure out their roles.
And in this model, with Mr. Trump, it's always going to be how can we blow it up, make it, sky is falling, emperor has no clothes, Hitler, all that crap. They're going to really pump it. But I think it's always there, and it comes down to the managers. And compared to the last go round, this seems like nothing. Child's play.
I tend to agree with you. I appreciate you weighing in. Did you have a question you wanted to ask, or you just?
I didn't. When that came up, I thought, well, this would be a great way to make my bones on two-way. That I figured out how to raise my hand, thanks to asking a question in the chat, I'll be back and do it again. So,
all right, David, thank you. David, you a fan at all of Ally? You a fan of all of Ally McBeal? The show Ally McBeal?
I never saw an episode, but the former Mrs. Riebel loved it.
Okay, well, David Kelly, the director, creator of Ally McBeal, is here with us. Unless it's a different David
I
Kelly,
have a
which it might
feeling
be.
it's a different David Kelly.
All right. David R., thank you. David K.,
Very well,
welcome in.
thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being part of Two-Way. David, tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind, please.
Good afternoon.
Yes, sir. Where are you?
Bay Area, California.
Another Californian. All right. Are you a native Californian?
Yes, sir.
Did you want Demi Moore to win?
Who?
Never mind. What's on your mind, sir?
Question about the Zelensky-Trump spat.
Yes, sir.
Seems like the conversation on cable television has shifted from, the United States is funding Ukraine to defend democracy to a shift to, well, this is about NATO enlargement and providing security guarantees from Ukraine, which I've never heard, but I've always thought that's the whole reason we're over there or funding Ukraine.
Right.
Did you confirm that and also, or deny that, or maybe I'm mistaken? The second is, it seems like on left-wing media in this past weekend about these security guarantees, they just seem to be very looking out for the interests of the Europeans, perhaps, not the United States.
Yes, sir. Great points. Alex, thoughts on that?
Sorry, what would have the question being?
Well, it's just is my observations correct, or am I incorrect, or
and restate the shift you see. Forget the media siding with the Europeans. We'll stipulate that that's all too true.
The shift I saw in the weekend, and I'm just going in to confirm or deny, is I saw a shift in the debate on cable television over the past weekend from the United States is giving money to Ukraine to defend democracy to the issue at hand is about NATO enlargement and security guarantees for Ukraine.
Right.
And this is in relation to this proxy war that's being run against Russia. Is that true or am I incorrect?
Alex.
Full disclosure, I did not watch a lot of cable news over the weekend. To me, what the debate now is centering on is the administration taking the right approach in terms of its posture towards Ukraine and its seeming, but the White House would deny as an alliance with Russia, but more of a willing to align with Russia than the Biden administration is. That to me seems like where this debate is headed right now. But full disclosure, I did not watch a lot of cable news over the weekend.
Matt, just making use them as a proxy. Matt, what would you say there's still a national consensus of any sort about what America's posture towards Ukraine is?
I feel like in many ways, the median voter over the last year has shifted on its view of Ukraine, right? Like it's not 2023, 2022 anymore. And I feel like Zelensky, whether he knows it or not, vastly underestimated that. And I mean, that's what it obviously comes down to. And the Europeans can have all the photo ops they want, unless it's coming with defense spending increases. It doesn't really mean much. And everybody in the White House knows that.
Right.
And I just saw that just coming across the wire now, they've paused military aid the U.S. has to Ukraine. And so they're going to pressure and just squeeze Zelensky until he makes that, as Mark, you talked about earlier, that humbling himself on camera.
Right.
Sarah, there's been a lot of discussion by the president and by some Europeans that the way to deal with the security is to integrate Ukraine into the American economy and the EU economy. And that if that happens, Putin doesn't have any ability to invade. Is economic reconstruction a project that a lot of Western private companies are eager to be involved in?
I'm not so sure about that. I thought the minerals deal I thought was interesting. I read it to be more as Trump trying to provide air cover to be a bit more helpful ultimately of Ukraine than maybe his base would have supported. But that didn't prove to be the right theory on Friday. So but I thought he was just trying to kind of show he got something for the aid because people are so frustrated with it. But
you think builders of businesses and infrastructure are not going to want to go into Ukraine if there's a ceasefire and some sort of settlement?
I don't know, but I would say they're going to want to see how permanent it feels for sure.
Yeah. David, thank you for joining. Appreciate the topic and the question and your participation. Thank you very much. All right. James, come on in, and I'm going to bring Megan in as well, one by one. First, James, tell us first where you are.
Hey, it's Jim. I'm in West Hartford, Connecticut.
Yep, Jim, thank you. And Megan, tell folks where you are.
I'm in Arizona.
Great. Megan, what's on your mind tonight?
I haven't seen, I feel like you don't get the moment yet, Mark, with the Zelensky thing. And I just want, Megan returns. As an indigenous working class American, what happened on Friday was Zelensky was the most cathartic thing I've ever seen on TV. It was the best feeling to see an elected representative say, no more money for me, because my grandfather was a coal miner. He was able to get a house like 50 acres in West Virginia. And my dad was able to get a house and eventually go from lower middle class to upper middle class. I don't own a house. Will I ever own a house? Stop spending my money in foreign countries. Like,
yeah.
Stop.
Megan, I say respectfully, if you think I don't get that moment, you're wrong. I was there about a year and a half ago. I don't understand the policy of just giving them money to a guy who's no intention or capacity to actually win the war. Seemed like a waste of our tax money and a bad idea for Europe. Jim, what's on your mind tonight?
Yeah, so three things quickly. First, on the markets, I think the market's reaction is a bit to do with the fact that we're going to get a negative GDP print for the first quarter, mostly due to front loading. We don't count imports as GDP, so we're front loading imports in front of the tariffs. So we're likely to have a negative print in the first quarter. That's kind of coming to light right now. And the politics on that are going to be beautiful because if the tariffs go in place and you chew through the imported stuff, you're going to likely have in the second quarter a very big number print on the GDP, which when the administration pays attention to it, they'll get some credit for. Second, like on the mineral deal, China has a monopoly on minerals, on those rare earth minerals in many cases. I think you just need a couple of those sites around the world to sort of manage the Chinese behavior. So I do think it's relatively important that we get that deal. And I think Zelensky is making a mistake by not recognizing the import of that deal. But the question or the comment that I would love to be addressed is this. It seems to me in the world of realpolitik that we now live in, it is in the United States' best interest to have a collaborative working relationship with Russia, even more so than with Europe or with Asia. And I'm just curious about any comments you may have on anything I said.
Yeah. Sarah, why don't you at least take the first two economic ones and tell us what you think of
Well, I
that.
agree with your assessment. I agree with the assessment of the print. I think that's exactly what's going to happen for kind of a series of idiosyncratic reasons. Not positive how much that will help the president necessarily. I think people are looking at their own cost of goods rather than the GDP print. But I agree with the assessment of where we're headed and exactly for those reasons.
And what about the notion of it's important to check the Chinese a little bit with access to what Ukraine has in the ground?
I didn't look close. I mean, a lot of what China has, so they have a lot of minerals and stuff, but they also have all the processing. So until we solve that problem, wherever the minerals come from, until somebody else learns to process them, it's not necessarily going to solve the problem. But I understand the optics of it. I am not a student enough of the regions at play and what is truly gettable from there. So I'm not positive it's going to solve the problem people hope it's going to, but certainly important area of concern for the United States about our own lack of minerals.
Alex, Jim has raised one of the 42 theories about why Donald Trump is tilts towards Putin and has for a long time, which is his geopolitical view is it's more important to deal with Russia than it is to deal with, Belgium and maybe even France. So is that in part of your dinner party explanation to people of why Trump likes to say nice things about Putin?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the 40 explanations that people come up with. It's always, I think that's exactly a great way of putting it. It makes sense. It is an explanation that makes sense. There's also the explanation that I've always personally bought into is that he kind of admires the way Putin leads. Trump kind of likes that. But yeah, I think it makes sense. He sees Russia as a power in a way that he doesn't see other countries as serious powers. And Trump is very much about image.
Yeah.
And so he's much more interested in doing business and talking with countries that he regards as real powers.
Yeah. Jim, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And oops, hit the wrong button, which I sometimes do. And Megan, thank you both for coming. Matt Gorman, last question for you, which is this Trump speech feels different to me. There doesn't seem to be a lot of pressure or buildup. It's not a State of the Union, but it is a State of the Union. So why is there so little buildup? Because it's his fifth time?
Yeah, and I think, look, there's so much other stuff going on. It's almost accidental. People haven't talked about it as much. I mean, I saw your face when I mentioned the affordabilities are in the context of this, quasi State of the Union. I think, look, my advice, if they would never take it, whatever, but I'm kidding. But like, my advice is obviously you need some dramatic moments. But number two, so much has been going on. A ton of actions in 20 different directions. I think, predominantly good. Tell a story, make it into a theme, right? He did it with the inaugural, common sense, right? Make this into a theme tomorrow night, and that's successful.
Yeah. You think he'll stay on the prompter?
I hope not, because that's when the fun starts.
Yeah. All right. So it's been an eventful year for America and people around the world, but perhaps the most eventful time of all being joined by Alex, who moved over to Axios, where he's now part of the star firmament, but also coming in just a few weeks, Alex's book, Revenge. What do you think that book's about, everybody? The inside story of Trump's return to power. Alex, why should everyone pre-order the book right now?
There is a lot that happened in this campaign that people don't know about, that people haven't learned yet. And I'm excited to tell that story. And it's a story that sheds a lot of light on the presidency that Trump has had so far and the presidency that I think Trump is going to have for the next 3.5 years, 4 years.
So everybody on here consumes a lot of news and information about Trump and has for a long time. You wouldn't be here if you didn't. Alex's book has a lot of scoops in it, and if you Google, you'll see many of them have already been reported in the sophisticated drumbeat that he's orchestrated like a master puppeteer leading up to the release of the book. But Alex also, not uniquely, but one of very few reporters who actually understands not just Trump, but the constellation around Trump. So if you want a good fingertip feel for what's going on and what's happened, I recommend you buy the book. How's that, Alex? Did I read that
Thank
right?
you, Mark. That means a lot.
It's right in the teleprompter. No, it's absolutely true.
Because you wrote the book that I hope I can sort of live up to, because you were the original. So
very kind of you. All right, Alex, thank you for coming on. Please come back. All right, and Matt, please come back always, and always with Pet. And Sarah, as always, please come back. And I hope you get to sleep in tomorrow, because it's a little late there.
But a little late, but it's good.
Thanks for staying up with us
here, so
thank you for staying up with us. Appreciate it. All right, a couple things to review. Tomorrow morning meeting at 9. This program at 6, and then at 8:30 Eastern time. Put up the graphic. At 8:30 Eastern time, our special coverage of the president's address to Congress. Now, you can watch it on cable news. You can watch it on broadcast, C-SPAN. Two ways different. And those of you who are here and listening to the sound of my voice and looking at my Tucker Carlson X shirt, know two ways different. Why is it different? We'll talk about it the way we talk about everything. During the speech, there's long breaks for applause and stuff. We'll chime in. You won't hear that at other places, respectfully. but we'll chime in. And then afterwards, we'll not only talk about the speech with a bunch of guests, but we'll also sample the coverage. We'll be on social media together. We'll be looking at cable and broadcast TV together, trying to get a feel for how people are feeling about it. That aggregation of opinion and of analysis is not something you'll get anywhere else. And then obviously the two-way component, a chance for you all to weigh in. So please join us tomorrow night, 8:30 Eastern time, then for the full speech, the Democratic response. And then a reminder, as I told you, this program now sponsored by our friends at the Bahnsen Group. David Bahnsen, one of the great economic minds in this country, who has had a long, successful career working for a long time at Morgan Stanley and now runs the Bahnsen Group, private wealth management. If you're an American who's fortunate enough to have some wealth and you want a place to put it that will manage it well and not outsource it to outside folks, but to work directly with you and provide the content that they provide to put context around decision making. You want to be with someone with your wealth that you've worked hard for, to who understands markets, understands the world, and communicates. And that's what David and his colleagues do. So you can subscribe to Dividend Cafe, which is their newsletter. It's free, gives you lots of great information. I read it. I recommend you do too. But also Thursday night, right after this program, join me and David to talk about tariffs, the impact of tariffs. Come bring your questions about how the tariffs are going to affect our economy, your community, your family, and what it means to the nuts and bolts of what it means when these tariffs go on. And obviously, by Thursday, we'll have a lot to talk about because either the tariff war will be underway or the president will have found a creative way out of it. Either way, great. To sign up for Thursday night session, talk about tariffs, you can go to twoway.tv/TBG. Same place you can subscribe to Dividend Cafe, which I recommend to you. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in 14 hours with Dan and Sean for the morning meeting. Very grateful to our three guests and to all of you for being part of Two Way. Good night and bonne chance.